And did you get what you wanted from this life? Even so, I did. And what did you want? To call myself beloved, to feel myself beloved on the earth. So taking a comfortable seat, whether on the cushion or on a chair. If on a chair, feeling your feet flat on the floor, and then your hands facing up on your lap. And slowly sensing the blur of presence beginning to clarify and sharpen into a crisp picture. Coming back here to this moment. And then just like your coat at a party, throwing whatever worries you brought into this day onto the bed. Whatever ruminations you had about yesterday, whatever concerns you have about later today or tomorrow, just taking them off like a coat and throwing them onto the bed and coming back to the party of right now. Just as an experiment for the next half an hour to be here together. And so we start with a smile in our heart so that it reaches every cell, not just the face or the eyes or the mouth, but feeling blood vessels and kidneys, knees, shoulders, bones, everything feeling the extension of that smile in the heart. And then softening the shoulders, letting them fall, and softening the muscles of the face around the mouth and the eyes, behind the ears. And just placing your awareness at the center of your forehead, between your eyebrows. So that, like a pin, it holds up the cloth that's the rest of your body. You're at attention, but relaxed at the same time. And then lengthening the neck a little bit by a millimeter, if that's comfortable. And straightening the back just by the slightest amount. And when you find yourself leaning in again, gently correcting. And you can creak open the doors of the heart and allow whatever comes and goes to just flow in and flow out without judging or holding on. That's active samadhi, active concentration, where you just watch the wind blowing in and out of the bamboo, like Thich Nhat Hanh says. And then breathing into the count of 4, pausing at the top. And releasing to the count of 5. And we might dedicate the merit of our practice to somebody who is trying to hold it together in this room. And we give the fruits of our practice to them, breathing in to the count of 4. And in the forge of the heart, turning that suffering into compassion and just releasing to the count of 5. That's Tonglen. And as I like to say, breathing in, I know this is an illusory world. It's an elaborate dream. Breathing out, I choose this world to help relieve the suffering of others. Now we're in it. And that feeling of the walls widening and the ceiling raising in the room that we thought we were sitting in is actually this cathedral of opportunity. I get the feeling that there's a hugeness to life that we hadn't apprehended before. A kshanti, a spaciousness, so that the problems that seem so cramped in a small room now feel like salt in a huge lake. They just dissolve. Nothing changes about them, but the feeling of spaciousness transforms how we experience them. One more breath. Late fragment. And did you get what you wanted from this life? Even so, I did. And what did you want? To call myself beloved, to feel myself beloved on the earth. This poem by Raymond Carver was written at the end of his life. He died very young at 50 from lung cancer in 1988. And at the time, he was at the top of his game. But with a stage 4 cancer diagnosis, he started to write very personal poetry about the process of coming to terms with his own death. But Carver's best known for his short stories, the most wonderful of which is a story called Cathedral. And I mention it here because there are some things in common between Cathedral and this poem I want to talk about today, and about that feeling of living in a cathedral that I describe often when I'm meditating. I'm always secretly thinking of Carver's story when I use that metaphor. And for those of you who don't know the story, in Cathedral, a man who is blind teaches a sighted man, who's the protagonist of the story, how to draw a cathedral with his eyes closed. That's pretty much it. And at the end of this interaction, the protagonist, the sighted man, gets the feeling that his life had been very small and that he'd been living in this boxed up world where things had fixed identities and roles, where things were supposed to be a certain way. But this blind man puts his hand over the hand of the sighted man and guides him and offers him a new perspective. He thought he was living in a box, but he was actually living in a cathedral. It's often compared to Oedipus because this is the role that Tiresias, who was also blind, plays in guiding Oedipus toward his difficult, agonizing truth. And at the end of Oedipus, Oedipus gouges out his own eyes so that he won't be fooled anymore by the appearances of this world. It's the role of things like the Eightfold Path, which we've been talking about all semester, concluding today with this poem. We need guides like the Eightfold Path to put their hand over our hand to show us how to map a world that we already live inside, but we just don't know it. So in this poem, the big self, we could say, is asking the small self a question. The question is, did you get what you wanted from this life? Which could be fine as a marginal note or a journal entry, but what makes this a poem are the two words, even so. Even so. What does he mean by even so? It could mean that, did you get what you wanted from this life, even though you didn't live a long life? Even so? Did you get what you wanted, even though you found out very late fragment, the poem is called, even so? But the other side of it is, did you get what you wanted, even though for most of your life you chased the wrong things? Even so? So Dante says that being blessed comes in an act of sight and not in love, which happens afterwards. It's one of my favorite lines from Paradiso. And that's why, again, we need people like Tiresias and this blind man who are not fooled by the way life looks, but who can show us our true vision and offer us the chance to glimpse what life actually is. So his answer is, I did get what I wanted, even so. And it was to call myself beloved, to feel myself beloved on this earth. I love that he corrects himself. To call myself beloved, no, to feel myself. And then there's this line break that you can see. So to call oneself beloved is getting close to that experience of true vision. But to feel oneself beloved is to be inside the experience. You're not looking from the outside and finding a name for it anymore, but you're actually having the experience. To feel what it was like to be on the earth is really what he's saying. And that's what is happening in the poem. It happened to me even though I tried to screw it up again and again. He gets there, Ray Carver gets there because he's dying young. And for so many of us, it's this confrontation with death that brings us into the full of awareness of the cathedral that we're actually living in. And poetry is filled with poets like Keats who are dying young and who have this apprehension early. People say about Keats, what if he had lived? Imagine the poet he would have become if he had lived. But he might not have ever been that poet if he hadn't been dying young, because that's exactly the contradiction and the cognitive dissonance that brings out this greatness in him. Or it's like what Tim O'Brien says about the war experience, about combat. You're never so alive, he says, as when you're almost dead. So the work that we're doing here with meditation, which is a kind of death, stepping back from the world, and the Eightfold Path is engineering that experience very softly for us so that we can remind ourselves gently that that's where the truth really lies. It's the feeling of wanting to have the experience of the other, but not wanting to just come merely close to it, but to actually be inside it, which is what a good poem does. A pretty good poem brings me close to the voice that's speaking off the page. But a great poem puts me inside that voice. It makes that voice my own, coming back at me and reaching me across that great distance, sometimes across great distances of time. I feel that that's really me talking back to me on the page. So it's in these experiences of the cathedral that when we're looking out into the world, we actually see ourselves looking back at us. And Raymond Carver is calling that the feeling of being beloved on the earth, the feeling of being part of that big self that already knows it belongs here. Here's the poem again. Late Fragment. And did you get what you wanted from this life, even so? I did. And what did you want? To call myself beloved, to feel myself beloved on the earth. Taking a comfortable seat, getting back into that position of receptivity. Hands facing upward. Feeling that point of attention at the center of your forehead and everything else just relaxing around that fixedness. The muscles of the face, the shoulders, the belly, your 2 feet on the floor. Once again, feeling that fuzziness coming into focus as you gently collapse into this moment. What is that hand guiding your hand? I know for some in this room, it's the Beatitudes. For others, it's a community at a synagogue or a sangha. This semester for me, it has been profoundly the Eightfold Path. Starting with the portion we call pana or wisdom, with right view. We just align with the Four Noble Truths. Life is suffering. Suffering is caused by being attached to the outcomes that you expect. There's a release from suffering, a cessation of suffering. And the way to get there is the Eightfold Path. And then right thought, which just asks, is this true? It feels real, but is it actually true? Right thought involves asking the question, what am I actually doing? And you bring yourself back again and again to be aware of where you are and what's happening right now. And then there's the Sila section of the Eightfold Path, which has to do with ethical behavior. All the lists of questions around right speech, like, is it kind? Is it beneficial? Is it timely? Is it correct? We talked about right action with its shalt nots, like you shouldn't steal or lie or exploit people or overindulge in distractions of all sorts. And right livelihood, which is just choosing work that does less harm, even though in the world, everything so interconnected as it is going to pull you back in. But you just gently do your best to live without doing harm. And then the final section, which is samadhi, mental discipline in this context. We talked about right effort, why we do things, whether for compensation or to contribute to the expansion of consciousness, to plant seeds of wholesomeness and kindness, and to avoid seeds of destructiveness. We talked about right mindfulness, which has the two wings. Remember the wing of compassion and the wing of wisdom, and you need both. Wisdom says, this is a dream. Compassion says, yeah, but it hurts, and it's important to help relieve the suffering of others. And then finally, right concentration or right samadhi, where we live this in the world but not of it quality. We have active concentration where we watch the world go by, we watch the wind go in and out of the bamboo. And we have selective concentration where we fix our attention on a point and anchor ourselves in the here and now. The end of the Eightfold Path is surrender. Every tradition we practice in this room embraces surrender, where we say, thy will be done. And I think it's true that we don't need instructions. Most of us don't need instructions on how to feel love for our babies. It's like Winnicott said, there really is no baby at the beginning. The baby is an extension of the mother. And I think that that's what Mary felt about the bear and the pine cone. And it's what the Arhat or the Buddha felt about all the world. Late Fragment. And did you get what you wanted from this life? Even so, I did. And what did you want? To call myself beloved, to feel myself beloved on the earth.